What's going on, guys? So due to high demand, I finally got round to doing the Razer Onza vs Scuf controller review. I've had the Onzas for nearly 2 months now, and I've had the Scuf controller for just under 2 weeks, so I've had enough time to get the full experience out the two pads, so I can actually give you an unbiased view of which one is actually better for you to use. I'm going to give you a little insight about the pad, then do the pros and cons for each controller. I'm going to start off with the Razer Onza only because I've had it longer. Months before the Onza even came out, there was a lot of hype surrounding it and a ton of crazy comments being made about it. Unfortunately, most of the people who bought it believed it did not reach their full expectations, and I for one am a part of that group. Some of the main problems people had was it being faulty before they'd even opened the box. Although nothing obvious like that happened to me, I did have a major issue with the left thumbstick. As you should know, to run on Call of Duty you have to press down the left thumbstick, and for some random reason I'd be running flags and the run would just randomly cancel out. Luckily enough, I had the tournament edition, which is £10 extra to the regular edition, but it gives you the option to adjust your thumbsticks, and once I got used to it, the issue disappeared. Right, now onto the pros and cons with the Razer Onza. Just a little side note, I'll always start with the cons and then go on to the benefits of the pad. For me, the main issue is the position of the remap buttons. As you can see, it's so close to vital buttons such as LB and RB. You could be in a close encounter and instead of jumping in the air, you'd randomly throw a flash instead of trying to jump. Or while you try and nade someone, you'd end up trying to stab, or you'd try and stab someone and you'd randomly throw a nade. This seems to be a common issue. Another minor problem for me is that there's no grip on the thumbsticks. If you look at the original Xbox controller, you can see that there is grip on it, and for some odd reason the Onza didn't have that. Although it's something so basic, I do think it's necessary. One of the most common issues, which wasn't really a problem for me, is the triggers. As you can see, they fly up at the end, and for some people it just didn't feel natural and they couldn't get used to it. I didn't seem to see that as an issue, but I did notice that it took away your trigger finger. You couldn't spam the trigger at all, so for people like on COD 4, when they used to get out the deagle and spray and pray, you couldn't do that with this pad. Also, I don't know if the thumbstick issue was a common fault or my pad was actually broke. Pros about the pad. The X, Y and A buttons, they feel like you're clicking a PC mouse and seem to be very responsive. One advantage that Onza has over the Scuf is that you can change the remap buttons at any given time, whereas the Scuf controller is customly made for you, so I don't know what you'd have to do if you wanted to change that. Now onto the Scuf. It's an original Xbox pad but with a few extra optional features, such as the right thumbstick to be a PS3 type dome thumbstick, the adjustable hair trigger / trigger stoppers. They also have remap paddles instead of remap buttons. On a first glance I wasn't too sure about them because they look very unusual. I didn't think they'd be very responsive, but after using them I think they're great, and I do actually prefer them over the Onza's remap buttons. To describe the trigger stoppers, I'm going to read to you what they say on the website. Almost every FPS firing system requires you to press the trigger a considerable amount before you actually shoot. The Scuf Pro allows you to shoot / aim as soon as you touch the trigger, which reduces your reaction time considerably, which can actually be vital when you're playing some of the best people on the game and you're in a 1v1 situation. Now for the cons. The trigger stoppers are for FPS games only, so when you go on games such as FIFA you can't sprint, so you either have to keep adjusting them or change pad. Adjusting them is a bit like trial and error to get them the way you had them before, so I tend not to bother and change pad. I know that the pad is for FPS only, it just seems a bit annoying that you have to do it every time you play FIFA. Also, when you're in theatre you can't speed it up to the full amount because of the stoppers in the way, so instead of speeding the clip up by 4 times than what it normally is, you can only normally reach till about 1.8. Although I prefer the placement of the remap paddles, just before the Onza came out I played with the wireless controller, so my index finger's naturally placed on the back of the rechargeable battery pack, which is in the middle of the pad. So for the first few days I couldn't use the paddles to the full extent because the paddles are on the sides instead of in the middle, so I had to think about where the paddles were every time I used them. I still have some problems, but I'm getting there. Now onto the pros. I know I said I couldn't really get used to where the remap buttons were. When you do get used to them you realise they are so much better than the Onza ones. They seem a lot more responsive and they do feel like you're pressing the X, Y, A, B buttons on the Onza, so it does feel like you're clicking a mouse every time you press it. It's also very responsive. Plus the trigger stoppers are vital and I have definitely noticed a difference. The pad, also being the original Xbox pad, is what we've been playing with for years, so it feels much better in your hands and it just feels natural, which is a huge plus. A lot of people seem to be doing well with them as well. I remember watching the ECL3 live stream and the commentator kept talking about Apex Tommy / TCM Tommy T, that he was using the Scuf controller. On Grid Demolition, I believe, he was going on an absolute knife spree, and that's what I believe his remap buttons was. I believe the right one is actually B, so he can stab people without actually taking his fingers off the pad. With all this being said, I do definitely prefer the Scuf controller, and I would recommend them to any competitive gamer. I do like mine. And yesterday or the day before, I actually sold my Onzas because I didn't need them anymore. Links to buy both pads are in the description. I hope you enjoyed this, guys, and I hope you had a good weekend. Another video will be uploaded later today as well, so yeah, see you later.